please remind me that I've met you, because I'm mostly meeting you from the eyes up, and it's hard to discern if I've met you from your eyes. I wish that I could remember all of your eyes, but I don't always, so forgive me for that. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how to become well people. But there's this thing all around the world. There are these places called free ports. Maybe you've heard of them. And there are these ports where they were built for international trading. And I actually lived about 2 hours away from one when I lived in Pennsylvania. There's one in Delaware. And how they were designed was for international trades, that goods would travel through them and not have to pay taxes until they got to the port of entry, right? That way, each time you stopped, you didn't pay taxes here and then pay taxes here. It was meant to ease trading, but recently they've taken on a new use, a strange use. Very wealthy people have started making them into storage units, right? And so there's these giant storage units in these free ports where lots of wealthy people are putting all of their stuff so they don't have to pay taxes on it. And one of the major things that is being stored in free ports all around the world is art. Apparently art is the thing to invest in because the appreciation rate is just terrific. So all of this art is being stored. To give you a sense, this is like billions of dollars of art is being stored at free ports. Here's a sense of scale. The National Art Gallery in London has 2,300 paintings. Right? The MoMA in New York has over 200,000. In one free port in Geneva, there are over 1 million paintings. Over 1,000 of those are Picassos. And you just have to stop and think, no artist ever said, you know what, I'm going to paint this beautiful piece of art. I'm going to pour my soul into it in the hopes that someone really wealthy is going to buy it, put it in a dark storage unit, let it earn more money, and then they're going to sell it to another wealthy person who's going to put it in their dark storage unit, right? It's like adventures and missing the point when it comes to art. Art has more value than just finances, right? The beauty of art is what it does for humanity. It stirs our soul. It causes us to ask questions, or it captures a beautiful moment, or sometimes a challenging moment. That's the whole point of art. It's not to lock it up and let it build up some financial value and then sell it to someone else. And we think, this is crazy, right? We can look at that and think, this is totally not the way it's supposed to be. But the truth is, many of us treat our faith the exact same way, right? Many of you would say, your faith is the most valuable thing in your life. Your relationship with Jesus is foundational to who you are and how you live. But a lot of us have taken our faith and kind of locked it up so that nobody else sees it. And there's a lot of reasons for this. It can feel intimidating to share our faith. One way that it feels intimidating is we think, I don't know what to say. Right? Like I like to leave that to the experts. They studied it and they have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, I promise you. Or you think I want my coworkers and my friends to like me. So I don't want to talk about my faith because then they'd stop liking me and I want them to like me. Or because you think you have to be belligerent or get into some debate. Sometimes we don't share our faith because we feel unworthy of it. Or you think, yeah, Jesus is great, I love Jesus, but Jesus definitely does not want me talking about him. Like, have you seen me? I'm a mess. I'm not a good representative for Jesus. Or sometimes we've fallen into what I call the church rut. And some of you here are now being like, I might be in the church rut, which is you go to church, and then you go to hear about your faith, and then you go to church groups to talk about your faith, and then you talk to your church friends about your faith, and hang out with your church friends. And eventually you begin to realize the only people I talk to my faith about are the people who already share my faith. And some of us become guilty of becoming spiritual gluttons, where we think faith is something to be consumed. It is for me. I need to come and get more, and get more, and get more. And yes, we definitely want to keep growing in our knowledge and our understanding of our faith. There's nothing wrong with coming to church and being part of groups and talking with our Christian friends. But faith isn't just meant to be consumed, it's meant to be lived. It's meant to be shared. It's meant to be on display, just like art is meant to be on display. But again, that can feel really intimidating. And so, how do we go about this? What does this look like? And so today I want to draw on a very unlikely evangelist. Someone that you think, definitely doesn't know what they're talking about. Definitely, if you were going to say like, oh, they're not a good representative, and yet they show us the way. She's going to show us how we at the well can be people who live our faith on display. So, I'm going to go through the story. If you're someone who likes to follow along in your own Bible, we'll be in John chapter 4, but you don't need one. It'll all be on the screen. So, don't feel intimidated. If you're like, I don't have one, I'm going to pull out my phone and pretend that I have it. Don't worry about it, okay? So, a lot has been made of this story. There's been a lot of theological debate about this story, and those are great conversations to have. That's not the conversation we're going to have today. Because the most important thing, we're going to walk through the story, is what happens after the conversation. But I'll point out some of the important things that go on during the conversation. So let's begin. So Jesus, he's traveling. He's traveling with his disciples. He's been in one place. He's going to another place. He's been stirring up trouble like he always does. I always say, don't hang out with Jesus. He's lots of trouble. If you want everything to be safe and steady and easy and calm and go the way that you want it to go, don't let Jesus in your life. Because he stirs everything up. He makes all sorts of trouble. That's what he's been doing, and he's going to do some more of that. So Jesus, had to go through Samaria on the way, on to where he's going. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon, a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You are a Jew, I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" Okay, so we're going to pause right there. So Jesus, he's been on this long journey. It's the middle of the day. It's hot. I'm beginning to realize a new level of hot living here in Oklahoma, where I'm like, 75 is hot here. It's so humid. It's really hot. So middle of the day, hot, right? Think middle of your summer, super hot, middle of the day, he's out by this well. And he's tired. And this lady comes along, and he asks her for a drink. Now, us reading that are like, okay, cool. He's thirsty, she's got a bucket. Any of the original hearers of this story would be like, wait, what? Hold the phone. What is happening here? They would be leaning in. This is a very scandalous scene. This is not done, what is happening right here. So I'm going to walk us through why this is a scene that everyone else would be like, what are you doing, Jesus? What is going on here? So first, Jesus is alone at this well with a woman. Men and women did not have conversations alone during this time. Part of it is it's an inheritance-based culture. Women are considered property, and so you don't want anything untoward happening towards women, right? That's a big thing. And so Jesus, especially rabbis, devout Jewish men, especially devout Jewish teachers, did not speak to women alone. And then you've got this history of wells all throughout the Hebrew Bible. If you go to the well stories, it's normally a man picking up a woman at the well. Okay, so this is like, already you're like, how? And we're pretty early on in the Gospel of John, so we don't quite know Jesus all that well. And people are probably like, who is this guy? What is going to happen at this well? So his reputation is on the line. There's no one else there. His reputation is beginning to build, but he's also trouble, right? Jesus started all sorts of trouble. All the authorities are like, I don't know about this guy. And here he is talking to a woman. Not only is he talking to a woman, she points out, you're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan. What are you doing? Jews and Samaritans did not talk to each other. Okay? They were enemies. There's great animosity here. They're considered political outcasts and religious outcasts according to the Jews. And so normally, the Jews would take, the way that Jesus is traveling, and said, he had to go through Samaria to get to where he's going. Well, technically, he didn't have to go through Samaria, because normally what Jews would do is they could go this way, through Samaria, or they could go all the way around this way, and not go through Samaria, right? And that's normally what they did. So the fact that Jesus already went through Samaria, that he chose to go through Samaria, is way out of the norm. And his disciples are off trying to find food. And here's the thing. Samaritans and Jews did not share drinking vessels. They did not share food. They did not share platters, because if a Jew were to consume something that a Samaritan touched, they would be ceremonially unclean. So you can imagine his disciples off here trying to find some food are already freaking out, right? They're like, what are we going to do? And Jesus turns to this woman and says, hey, can I have a drink? And she's like, what? Because he doesn't have a bucket. So he's going to have to drink from her bucket. And that's not done. that would make him ceremonially unclean. So we've got this Jewish rabbi talking to a woman, a Samaritan woman, asking to drink out of her bucket. And not only that, it's the middle of the day at the well. People didn't come to the well at the middle of the day because it's hot, right? They don't carry their bucket and go get water at the middle, because that's kind of like, that's where we get the water cooler. They like hang around the water cooler. People hung around the well, but they would go early in the morning when it's cooler, or late in the day when it's cooler. So the fact that she's come in the middle of the day means that she is ordering her life to avoid other people. So she is a double outcast. Right? She's an outcast because she's a Samaritan, but she's also an outcast within her own community. And so this whole scene should not be happening, right? Everyone's leaning in going, what is going on? And she acknowledges that. She's like, this shouldn't, you're asking me for a drink of water? Are you crazy? And Jesus says to her, if you only knew the gift of God, the gift God has for you, and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. And so Jesus makes this provoking offer. And what's really interesting, we don't pick this up, because in the original language, the word for living water and the word for running water are the same. So Jesus is doing this play on words to bring her closer in. Because they're at a well, and it's great to get water from a well, but if he has a water source that's running water is way fresher. It's a much better source of water, right? And so she has no idea who she's talking to. This is just some thirsty Jewish stranger sitting at a well saying, can I have a drink, right? She has no idea. And he's like, if you knew, I've got something better. And so she looks at him and she says, but sir, I love this. You don't have a rope or a bucket, right? Like, you don't have a bucket. What are you talking about? And this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? She's still thinking water, right? She's thinking water source. Where would you get this living water, this running water? And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed? So the story of Jacob's well is a longer story. It's found in the Hebrew Bible. I'm not going to go into it, but needless to say, this well, not only is it an abundant source of water, it's also has deep cultural significance, right? This is a good, she's like, this well is pretty great, right? This well is like one of the best wells around. You're saying you got something better than this well? Like what? Where's your bucket? Where is this running water? What are you talking about? Right? So she's leaning in. She's curious. What is this guy talking about? And so Jesus continues, and he says, anyone who drinks this water, the water from this well, will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. And so Jesus starts to flip the script here for her. He says, oh, no, I'm not just talking about the water source. I'm not just talking about like a better place to go get water. I'm talking about a different kind of water than you could ever imagine. What I'm offering you is better than anything you have ever heard of. And he makes this twofold promise. He says, because anyone who drinks the water that I'm talking about, the living water, not just running water, the living water, two things will happen. The first is your thirst, it will be satisfied. It will be quenched. It will go away. You won't need to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. But not only that, anyone who drinks of this living water, not only will their thirst be quenched, they will overflow. And that's what the Greek gives us. They will overflow and become a life source for everyone else around them. Right? And this sounds amazing. This sounds terrific. And this woman who has ordered her whole life to avoid other people, right? Who is coming to the well in the middle of the day, the heat of the day, she wants what he's offering. And she turns to him and she says, please, sir, give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here to get water. But she's still thinking water. She's still thinking, I won't have to be thirsty anymore. I won't have to keep trudging up to this well. It'll be done. Show me this water. And Jesus, he's lured her in, right? He's brought her in, and now he wants to talk about this living water. It's going to quench a thirst you don't even know you have. I'm talking about a different thirst. And he goes right for that, and he says, go get your husband, Jesus told her. And she says, I don't have a husband. He says, you're right. You don't have a husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man you're living with now. You certainly spoke the truth. Now, this is the point of the story where we tend to read it through 21st century eyes. Right? We think, yeah, Jesus is nailing this. Like, she's burning through husbands. And he's going to confront her about her sinful way because now she's living in sin with another guy. And you go get her, Jesus. Okay, here's the thing. This is the Gospel of John. Jesus is not afraid to talk about sin in the Gospel of John. Jesus says the word sin more in the Gospel of John than any of the other Gospels. Go and read it. He's always saying, you leave your life of sin, and you leave your life of sin, and you go and sin no more. He doesn't say sin here. That's significant. See, we think, oh, he's confronting this lady, because that's often how we think about the gospel. Jesus is going to come, he's going to tell you how bad you are, all the bad things you've done, get you in line, and then you'll stop doing bad things, and then you can follow Jesus. That's not what's happening here. Because there's lots of reasons why this woman might have had 5 husbands. The first is she might be a widow 5 times. It's very common in the Jewish culture at this time to marry a girl very young, 12, 13, to an older man, and then he would die, and she would be married to someone else. And this could have happened 5 different times, right? And here's the thing about tragedy in this time. If bad things start happening to you, it's because of you. God is cursing you. You must have something wrong with you that all your husbands keep dying, right? That might be one reason she's an outcast. She could have been divorced 5 times, but here's the other thing. It would have been incredibly rare. You can barely find, there are a few instances, but very, very few instances of women being able to issue a writ of divorce to her husband. Women didn't divorce their husbands. It's not 21st century. Women were property. Men could divorce their wives. Men could divorce their wives because they said, oh, she's unsatisfying to me because now this person is prettier. Right? They just had to come up with some sort of excuse. She could have been infertile, right? If she's been married 5 times, it doesn't seem like she has any children. Infertility is considered a curse at this time. Something's wrong with you. And then, she's living with someone who's not currently her husband. There were actually a lot of living arrangements like that because women who were not under the protection of a man in this time would be destitute. They would either go into prostitution or they would starve, right? They didn't have options. Women couldn't just go get a job and a house and support themselves. It's not how it worked. And so sometimes there would be these living arrangements where a woman would be under a man's protection, but they couldn't legally be married because it would endanger another inheritance arrangement. And so Jesus looks at this person and he says, I know your story. Jesus knows her story, even if we don't know her story. Right? And Jesus isn't here to confront her and make her feel bad and get her to leave her life of sin. Believe me, if that's what he was after, Jesus would say it. Right? And look at her response. Her response is, sir, you must be a prophet. Because she's just met someone who knows her, who sees her. That thirst that Jesus is talking about, that thirst, that well that you keep coming back to, and you think it's about this thirst, but it's this thirst. I know that thirst. That's what he's saying to her. I know it. I know you. And we don't need to know the details of her story. That's not the point here. The point is Jesus knows her, and it wakes her up. Because now she's seeing this possibility. Like, there's this guy who's connected with God, and so she's starting to feel accepted. And so she brings up the real divide. She brings up the things like, all this is great, but here's the real thing. Like, we know that we can't get past this. And she says, so tell me, why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place of worship, while we Samaritans claim it's here at Mount Gerizim, where our ancestors worship? Like, what? You say it's here, we say it's here, we disagree, we think you're wrong, you think we're wrong, we're never going to come together. This isn't really going to work. Sure, you're this man who's actually treating me with dignity and respect, like a human being, as a woman. You're a Jew who's extending grace and treating me like family, even though I'm a Samaritan. Right? You are a person who knows my story, even though I've been outcast by everybody else. But we can't really get past this. Here's the real thing, right? And this is what Jesus says to her. He says, believe me, dear woman. And when we hear that woman, sometimes we think like, oh, Jesus like woman. But that's actually this very endearing term. When Jesus says woman, it's a familial term. Believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know a lot about him, for salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed, it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. And what Jesus says to her is, yeah, all these ways that you guys keep dividing yourselves, and this group is in, and that group is out, and these people are right, and these people are wrong, these people are closer to God, and those people are further away. He says, none of that matters. Like, you've all got it wrong. And he just goes and erases all the lines that we put in to say, like, you fit in this box, and you fit in this box, and you stay over there in your corner. He says, none of these matter. You have not ordered the world the way that God wants to order the world. You have it wrong. It doesn't matter about your place or your group. None of this matters, because it's who you belong to. That's what matters. It's who you belong to. That's what God's looking for. People who are going to worship in spirit and in truth, because God isn't found in one place or another, in one group or another. God is drawing all of us. You too. You get to be part of this, is what he's saying to her. Right? And it's just like, she's having this encounter. And then she goes to this. She says, well, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And Jesus looks at her and he says, I'm the Messiah. That's me. And what is so cool about this moment is this is the first moment in the Gospel of John where Jesus claims his identity. Where Jesus says, yep. And, other people have said, I think he's the Messiah, he might be the Messiah. But this is the first time where Jesus says, I am the Messiah. And he says it to a woman who is at a well, who's a Samaritan, in the middle of the day, who no one else wants to be around. Right? That's who he says, I'm the one. I'm the one who's come to make everything right. And he just turns this whole woman's world upside down. She has this encounter with God in this moment. And so then he keeps going. Just then, his disciples come back. And they're shocked to find him talking to a woman. See, right there, we see it. Like, the disciples are like, what? What is Jesus doing? I love this line. And none of them have the nerve to ask, what do you want with her? Or why are you talking to her? I love the disciples. I love that you can, because it's written by them, so they're being really honest. Like, none of us could ask him. And they're wondering, like, here's a guy talking to a woman at the, like, what's Jesus doing with this woman at the well? Is he picking up a girlfriend? Like, that's what they're wondering, right? They're freaking out. And this woman, so they come back, and the woman left her jar beside the well. Like, she drops her jar. The whole reason she's come is to get water from this well. She just leaves it. And she runs back to town. She ran back to the village, telling everyone, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could he possibly be the Messiah? See, she had an encounter with Jesus, and it changed everything. It changed the way that she saw herself. It changed the way she saw others, the way she saw the world, the way she sees God. And she can't help but go and tell everyone else. This person who's been avoiding everyone. We don't know the reason. But suddenly all that breaks down. And she's not scared. She can't wait to tell people, you gotta come check this out. Something amazing is happening. There's someone you have to meet. He's changed me. And I want you to experience that too. That's what she runs back to the village to tell everyone about. And this is faith on display. Right? This is faith out loud. This is faith where other people can see and other people can experience God. This is what faith looks like. See, Jesus has come to make us well people. To make us well people. People who meet him at the well, who are made well, and then go out and tell others, you got to meet this guy. You have to experience this. This God who changed my life, he could change your life too. Come and see. Come and see. And Reggie Joyner, he leads Orange, which is one of like these big curriculum organizations, writing children's curriculum for churches, and they're really trying to think about how do we make faith stick in the younger generation? How do we have people experience Jesus early on and stick with it throughout their lives? And he has this great quote, I love it. He says this, people can't see God. People can't see Jesus. People can't see the Holy Spirit. But people can see people who follow God. People can see the church being the people, right? The people. And he says, the best chance someone may have to personally see God is to get a close-up look at the people who follow God. Just like the people in ancient times developed their view of God as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Moses, you have developed a sense of who God is because of who you have met. You have met the God of Susan, the God of Carlos, the God of Jeff. God uses people. That's the point. He always has. Sometimes we forget the God of the Bible is the God of the people of the Bible. God has always used people to demonstrate his story of redemption. It's through encountering people who have encountered Jesus that people come to know Jesus. It's through meeting people whose lives have been changed by Jesus. Those are the people, that's how we know that God is a God who changes lives. Right? Think about it. It's through meeting well people. Right? Think about the well people in your life. The God of fill in the blank. The people who had their faith on display and their faith encouraged your faith. Right? They drew you in. The God of, for me, my well people, some of my well people, the God of Mark and Kelly. And, if you were here a few weeks ago when I preached for the first time, then you know that I didn't grow up in the church. And so I met people along the way. I didn't know people who knew Jesus before I went to college. And I met Mark and Kelly. And Mark and Kelly were two workers with the campus group I was a part of. They were married, and they invited me to their house for Easter. And up until that Easter, the only Easter I'd ever known was chocolate Easter bunnies and Easter eggs. Like I didn't know that there was another story that went with Easter. This was my first Jesus Easter. And I went to this family, and it was the first family that I'd ever seen that was like, wow, they really like each other. Like, Mark and Kelly like each other, they like the kids like each other. Like, there was just so much love in this family, and I thought, I'm used to holidays being like, I wonder who's gonna fight with who, what's gonna happen. And this was the first family, I thought, oh, there's so much joy here, and I felt so loved and so welcome. And they talked about Jesus, their kids talked about Jesus, and how excited they were about the resurrection. And I thought, I don't know this excitement, but man, this seems really cool. And then there was the God of Evan. And Evan was the first person to invite me to the small group that changed my life. And he saw me, and he said, would you like to come be part of this group and come read the Bible with us? Right? And it was through being seen and included and invited and learning that Evan believed in this God. I thought, the God of Evan seems pretty cool. And then there was the God of Kristen. And Kristen was someone who walked beside me as I started to grow in my faith. And I had all these questions and all these doubts, and I didn't know what to do with them. And Kristen would just listen to me. I'd be like, well, if God's so good, then why did this terrible thing happen to me? Or why is the world like this? Or why is there this war? Why is there this injustice? And Kristen didn't feel the need to answer everything and justify everything. Kristen was able to share her doubts with me in the moments where she struggled with her faith. And then there was the God of Meg. And Meg was the first person to ever talk to me about prayer. I had no, I mean, when I thought about prayer, I thought you probably have to have all these special words and this formula, and I don't know how to pray. And she said, praying is just talking to God. I was like, oh, I can talk. You might be able to pick that up. I like to talk. And she said, try this. Just go for a walk, because she knew that I would walk a lot. She's like, next time you go for a walk, just start trying to talk to God. And I thought, okay. And I did. And one day God started talking back, and I was like, holy smokes, I ran into her as it happened. Like, she was in college and she was on the main boulevard. I'm like, Chris, I was talking, and then all these thoughts came into my brain. And God said this, and I don't even know what that word means. And so she sat down and told me what that word means. She changed my life. She taught me how to pray. And I was interested in their God because of them at first. These well people who had their faith on display. I wanted to know more. But soon, I wanted their God to be my God. I thought, does this God know everything about me? Does this God know my story? And wants to draw me in? Because I have a deep thirst. And could he possibly satisfy that too? Could I be a part of this? See, it's the people who live with their faith on display, these well people who say, I don't know, this God changed my life. I was this way, now I'm this way. And I think he could change your life too. That's the only way that people see God. That's the only way that people know that there is a God who changes lives, is when the people who follow God put their faith on display. And that's exactly what this woman does for the whole town. Right? This woman drops her bucket, runs the whole town. She's not the one to talk to, but before he says, you gotta come out. You gotta come out and see this guy. He knows me, he knows my whole story. I think he might be the Messiah. Come on out. And this is what we're told happens. Many Samaritans from the village believed in Jesus because the woman had said, he told me everything I ever did, right? He believed in the God of the woman at the well. First, they had an experience with Jesus because of her. When they came out to see him, they begged him to stay in their village. So he stayed for 2 days. And his disciples literally must be freaking out, right? They're like, we're not just passing through Samaria, we're gonna stay here for 2 days and eat and drink with these people? What? Stays for 2 days, long enough for many more to hear his message and believe. And then they said to the woman, now we believe, not just because of what you told us, but because we have heard him ourselves. Now we know that he is indeed the Savior of the world. Right? And this is the best thing about this story. Jesus comes in and he changes everything. He changes everything, because it's not just that these people, she believes and they believe, but he also redeems and restores her to her own people. Right? Whatever that was going on before, the things that divided, Jesus keeps saying, you have ordered the world wrongly. This is not how God wants to order the world. He comes, and when Jesus shows up, reconciliation happens. Right? Love happens. Restoration happens. And that happens in this story too. Everyone becomes well. Right? We get well when we're around Jesus. We become well people. We become well people because she put her faith on display. Right? Because her life was changed. And that's the thing that happens. When your life is actually being changed by Jesus, all those doubts and all those fears, they start to fall away because you can't help but say, come and see. I always say evangelism is like having great tacos, right? If you had great tacos last night, what are you going to go do? If you found a new awesome taco place, some of you don't like tacos, I'm very sad for you, but if you had great tacos, you go and you tell all your friends you had great tacos, right? And you're not worrying like, oh, they might judge me for liking Mexican food. You don't even think that, right? And if they say, I don't like tacos, you think that's so sad for you. You are missing out on all the amazing taco eating that you could have, right? And so that's what it should be like with Jesus. That we are having such a profound experience with Jesus that we can't help but talk about it, right? And we're not like fighting people, and we're not being belligerent. We're just like, man, God is doing awesome things in my life. God is changing my life. God wants to make us well people. So what do well people do? Well, they live out the twofold promise of God, right? This twofold promise that Jesus makes of the water. If you drink it, you will not be thirsty. Your thirst will be satisfied, and you will become a life source for others. And it looks like what you have already been doing. It looks like love God, love people. That's what it looks like. Love God, but that's what well people do, right? That's what you do. That's what well people do. They love God and they love people. So what does that look like, though? What does it mean to love God and to love people? And again, we can draw on the wisdom from the woman at the well. What does loving God look like with her? Well, it's encounter and engage, right? She shows up at the well. She has no idea who this guy is. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's in this place and she's encountered by Jesus. She's in a place where she can meet God. And so, are you in a place in your life where you can meet God, where God can encounter you, where God can show up? I mean, God can show up anywhere, but it's better if we're like actually in a place where we're hoping God will encounter. So that's being here on Sunday morning. That's being in prayer. That's reading our Bible. That's being in groups. That's listening to worship music. That whatever that is, it's those moments. It's being quiet, just being quiet. Sometimes turning off all the white noise and the podcast and the radio and the TV and just being quiet enough for God to maybe show up and say something to you. But not only does she encounter Jesus, she leans in. She engages. She wants to learn. She wants to grow. She's becoming a disciple of Jesus, because a disciple doesn't mean an expert. You know, a disciple, the word disciple literally means learner. That's what that word means. She's a learner. She wants to learn, right? She leans in. And so our job to love God means to be encountered by God and to learn from God. I love how Dallas Willard talks about discipleship. He says this: discipleship is spending time with Jesus, learning from Jesus how to be like Jesus. That's all discipleship is. And that's something that we're passionate about. And I'm so excited for the ways we're going to continue to lean into that here at the Well. That it's got to start with us loving God. If you're not growing in your relationship with God, you have nothing to share. You have nothing to put on display. Right? Then it's just this exercise in futility. It has to start with this spark inside of us. Because once that spark happens, all those three worries of like, I don't know what to say, I'm probably not worthy, you know, and I'm just stuck with people who already think all the same things that I think, they start to fall away. Because we start to look for people that we want to tell about. Like the people around us, we want our friends and family who don't know Jesus to know Jesus, not because we think, oh, you should and I should be telling you, but like, no, this God is going to change your life. Right? The spark opens up in us, and so then we do the next thing. We love people. We love people, and what does that look like? It looks like inviting and inspiring. And again, this woman, she drops her bucket, runs back to the town, and says, come and see. You have to come and see. That's a phrase that I love. You just see it all over the Gospel of John. Come and see. Come and see. You know, you want to know, just come and see. You know, I'm not going to convince you. You just got to see for yourself. Come with me and see. Come and see the God who already knows you. Come and see the God who loves you. Come and see the God who gave up everything for you, who died on the cross so you could have life. Come and see the God who changes lives, who restores and reconciles and makes all things right. Right? That's our invitation, is I'm going, come along with me. Come join me. I want to be with Jesus, and I'd love for you to meet him too. Right? That's the invitation. It's that simple. And the second thing that well people do is they inspire. They live a life that inspires others, because they said to her, well, we believe first because of what you said and your experience. Now we believe for ourselves. And all my well people, they inspired me. And this is one of my favorite quotes about Christianity in general, what Madeleine L'Engle says. She says, we do not draw people to Christ by loudly discrediting what they believe, by telling them how wrong they are and how right we are, but by showing them a light that is so lovely, they want with all their hearts to know the source of it. That's the life that we're called to live. A life that is so lovely, so transformed by the work of Jesus, that others look at you and say, I don't know what it is. I don't know what you have. I mean, we should leave quarantine, and other people might be going, that was so hard. I barely made it through, and we should be like, you know what? Man, I grew. I was with Jesus in a way that you would, our lives should be better on the other side of this. Because we already have the one who has all life. Right? We know the source that will fill your thirst. And then you become because that's our heart. I mean, we've given our lives to share the gospel. We love it more than anything else, right? We want to live our faith on display. But the reason why we said yes as well is because you are already those people too, right? Your faith is already on display. And I can't wait to see what God is going to do with us as we continue to lean into being disciples and spending time with Jesus, learning from Jesus, how to be like Jesus, that Jesus would just fill us up as a people and we become this living source for all those around us, big and small. I can't wait. I am so excited to be part of this community. I am so excited for God to continue to grow all of us and be well people. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you so much that you know us and you love us and you've given everything for us, God. That you know our story even when others don't. You know our deep thirst even when we can't name it for ourselves. And God, we lift ourselves up to you, both individually and collectively. God, that you would continue to make us well people. That you would do a new thing with us, Lord. That you would grow us in ways that people can't help but see. That it is a light and a life so lovely that people want that for themselves.